a second or two to
There it is.
kick
It's
on.
live.
There we go. There we go. Okay. And I got your screen is the one highlighted on here. Cool. Okay. So now we can actually look at this.
It should be your screen. It should be
Or
highlighted.
yeah, my I should say my screen. My
Okay.
screen is looking at your image, and that's being recorded, and it's fixed on my screen, so it's not going
Okay.
to switch between us, and we'll be good. We'll be good.
Rad.
All right. Whoa, what's up with this? What's up with this mountain?
It was just way too. The other one was just, I don't know. It was like cutting right into his head, and you guys said to fix the tangent stuff, so I tried to.
Yeah.
That was a
You
quick second, really.
you did do that. I'm just I want to look at this other one real quick. Oh, not that.
And the other one
Pictures.
was really bad.
That's what I want to look at because I thought the last one was uh like pretty much straight photo. That's not it either. Where's Brandon? Here we
Yeah, it
go.
was.
Let me see this. Yeah, that was okay. All right, I see that. This will be nice. I can kind
I
of
mean, it
flip
was
it
like a
on and off.
3 second fix. Like, I'm definitely gonna paint over it, but.
Okay. All right. Well, it's still. I want to flick this on and off so I can see the changes between her and the guy too.
Hmm.
Um. Okay. See that. Here, let me do this. Hold this over.
Man, them hotkeys though.
Yeah, I like my hotkeys. There we go. Now I don't need two files open. I can just flick that on and off. Okay. See one. And you're feeling right now that he feel his design is stronger, you think, than hers?
For the most part, I think so, because I feel like I played with shape a lot more with his.
Okay. So the thing that I see that feels I don't want to say stronger as in the design is better. It but I do want to say it feels stronger as in it's more bold than hers, mainly because you have a lot of large shapes with him.
Hmm.
Uh, there's a lot of like I see basically if I have to break this down, what I'm seeing is primary shapes, so like your big silhouettes, and then I
Hmm.
see the secondary shapes. But I'm not
Hmm.
seeing that third stage of the tertiary shapes, and that's fine. I'm not saying that's a bad thing right now. We have time to get into that, but I think that may be why you're feeling his design is more I don't know more stronger in the sense of in my head it feels more bold than hers.
Yeah.
The other thing is that could be doing that is that there's some very thick lines here, which is fine. Again, that goes back to us trying to stay somewhat loose while we're designing, getting the big shapes worked out. You did all that fine. So I don't want you to get confused by what I'm saying here, but I think that might be what's giving him, that stronger sense of design. Because I think if we go in here and we actually start thinning up these subdivisions,
Hmm.
basically the lines that separate all the different shapes, I think it'll start to it won't draw as much attention
Yeah.
with him, as where it is right now. So I'm not actually worried about that. I also like you went down and you started adding, the boot design, um, which is good, and then up into this knee pad area. I also kind of like how you have this overlap so that the knee armor overlaps the forearm that the leg is resting on. I might scale that down a little bit as
Hmm.
far as height because it's starting to creep up into the top of the arm here. So as always, let me get a drawing layer so I can show this. All right. So what I might do is you can keep this shape if you want, just maybe scale it back height-wise down here a little bit.
Yeah.
So it doesn't extend all the way up here because you start to cut off the top of the arm here. So I want that overlap. I just don't want it to creep up.
Completely overlap.
Yeah, because then it's minor, but it's another one of those issues where you run into a tangent. You just
Yeah.
have the top of his armor touching the top of the arm, and it feels a little awkward. So
I
that's all.
also made his arms not a lot bigger, but significantly enough to notice. Um, just because he
I
just
see
felt
that.
to
I see
me.
that on the far side. Yeah, I see that on the far side. So one of the things that happens because I think this happens with me when you're designing around a 3D model, the tendency can be to paint everything um, around the silhouette of the model. So
Hmm.
instead of actually building on top of the model, you're designing within the model, and that will actually make things in that situation feel very skinny. Um,
Yeah.
you have to keep in mind that the model is cool as like a framework for your figure, but all this armor and shit is going on top of that skin. Unless it's skin tight, it's not going to be that close to the body, so you will start to break up and bulk up those forms a little bit more. And I imagine that's probably what happened with that initial arm. So I agree with your change there that you kind of bulk that out just a little bit. I think that's okay. I think that's all right. So one of the things that I want to ask you about his particular design uh, is what in your mind illustrates that his armor fits his particular class, the hacker class?
Well, his wrist brace for one. I don't know if you can kind of see, but I was trying to like mimic like a little I don't want to say
The,
TV, but like a
this thing here,
screen.
yeah, that little LCD screen there. Okay, okay.
Yeah, I was trying to make a little screen on there, and then I wanted his armor to feel. I don't know if it was better to make him look more protected. Um, but I feel like he's definitely a lot more techy. Um,
In what
and
way? In what way?
well, like I don't know if you noticed, but like on the kneecap, I was gonna have like a little light where you have
This,
circled right now.
yeah. Uh huh.
Yeah, and then
Okay.
I was gonna have like the tubes around his like the back of the calf kind of glow, kind of
Okay.
like an
These
inner
guys
glow type
here.
of thing. Yeah,
Okay.
kind of like a heater type deal. I don't know.
Okay.
And then the shoulder pads, I was thinking of like vents. Um, I don't.
These little fins right here. You're saying?
Yeah.
Okay. What purpose do the events serve? And I'm not trying to challenge you. I'm just trying to get you to think about your design. So in your head, what purpose do the vents serve?
I honestly don't know. I
Okay.
just thought it looked cool, to be
Okay.
completely honest.
Okay. So in my head, like there's everyone has their kind of their own philosophy on design. So take what I say with a grain of salt. Um, but I think across the board, the general I don't know mantra of strong, confident design is a nice balance between the rule of cool, so shit that just looks cool, and something that's actually functional.
Hmm.
And it's kind of difficult, especially when you don't have, like, for instance, I don't have a background in industrial design.
Hmm.
Um, and that's one thing that I think actually kind of puts me at a disadvantage with a lot of the other concept designers out there who do have an industrial design background, because they have a physical understanding of how these parts are machined, how they're made, what materials are used, why they're used, and what purpose do they serve.
So I have
Um,
a question. Do you think that I was gonna add it, but I didn't know if it would be a good idea, but kind of like not really a glove on his hand, but like a I don't want to say cybernetic hand either, but kind of like an exoskeleton glove
yeah, yeah,
on his hand. Do you think
yeah.
that would work?
I think it absolutely would. I think it absolutely would, because that's what I want to try and get at with his particular design, is that it should his costume should reflect ultimately what his job is.
Hmm.
Something that's going to make his job easier. There's a reason he's the hacker and she's the sharpshooter, and their costumes can look cohesive as part of a team, but they also need to serve the user. So with him, I think something like that is absolutely, yeah, that's something that could really work. There, maybe there's particular electrical nodes within his fingertips or something, that allow him to, I don't have any idea, siphon electrical feeds or something off of whatever junction box he's working with. Whatever excuse you want to make up for that, I think is absolutely fine as long as, in the end, his suit kind of reflects his job, and her suit reflects her job. Um, so that's something that I want to kind of get you to think about as we move forward with this. Adding lights and stuff like that, that's fine. That's cool. It's aesthetic more than it is function,
Hmm.
and that's okay. But think about, like you just said, things like some sort of exoskeleton handpiece. Maybe he's got some sort of like, and this could be kind of old school now, which is weird to think about. But if he's got some sort of like Bluetooth headset mic or something like that in his ear, if there's anything that's going to sort of amplify what his job is, that's something that I want you to kind of consider.
What about like a brow? Because they were saying that I should give her like a cybernetic eye, but I'm not really feeling that.
You
But what
don't
about like a
have to go that
brow
route.
implant? Like a actual. Have you ever seen Transcendence yet?
I haven't yet. No, no, no. Wasn't that with
Well, like
that was Johnny Depp, wasn't it?
yeah, but
Yeah.
they like
No, I haven't yet.
they're cyber zombies or whatever. They kind of have like parts of their skull coming through and stuff,
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
shows
Okay.
like an underlay of cybernetics. So what if like his like brow that we're seeing right now in the light, what if I like gave it some sort of flip down like in the skin like mechanical object?
You could do something like that. I think it's going to be a little difficult to show that because he's
Yeah.
also kind of far away. But if you wanted to do something where, because you probably wouldn't be able to show it very well on the brow itself, just
Hmm.
because of the distance and he's kind of looking down. But if you wanted to extend that up into his forehead, so maybe it's like it's subdermal, it's like right under that layer of skin, and maybe that slides down over his eye or something. If you want to indicate that with some sort of shape above the brow going into the forehead, I think that's fine. I
Yeah.
think that's a good way to think about it. A lot of times you're going to run into situations like that where you have this great idea for the character, um, and this is I should also mention that this comes as a result of doing the composition before you get into design. This is
Hmm.
sort of just a byproduct of illustration. If you don't do the concept art first, then you have to kind of design around your composition. And with him, that's kind of a situation that we've run into. There's this cool idea for the eye, but he's a secondary character, he's in the background, and he's looking down. So how can
Hmm.
you show off that particular design? Well, you're going to have to exaggerate it a bit and probably extend that design up into the head somewhat.
Yeah.
So that's sort of my philosophy as we think about design. When you do the concept art stuff, it's really nice because you do the concept art first, and then you can design the character or design your composition around the character's design. So if they have this really cool like cape and shit, you can work that into your composition ahead of time because you're working from the concept art. But you're not going to have time to do that if you're working in the illustration field generally.
Yeah.
Especially when you're the one coming up with the design. If they're not providing you with concept art, you have to do the illustration and the design work. You're kind of trying to kill two birds with one stone, so you have to make do with what you got. And I think that's fine. I don't think we're at a detriment there. I think we're still coming up with cool designs that can be implemented with our current setup. We're just going to have to work around some of those constraints. So no problem there. I do think that the fins on his shoulder are a little unnecessary, and they're not anywhere else in the scene.
Hmm.
Um, what I do like though is this honeycomb pattern that you have on her shoulder piece, and that can
Okay.
be something that you could tie into this. And it's nice because he's so small. All that really needs to become are just dots. Uh,
Yeah.
Honestly, when this piece is done, those will just be dots. You don't need to stick to this really tight honeycomb pattern. Is that just a brush? It looks like it's kind of just a
It's
sand
just
brush.
well, it's like a brush, but I use it as a stamp. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well then, yeah, you can just use that and put a few stamps of dots on the shoulder piece, and that'll be that's fine. That's something else that can kind of tie them together. This too. This is a nice little indicator here. I like this shape. This little cutout crevice here.
Hmm.
That's another thing. If you wanted, you got space for it here. to try and tie it in. Because and the reason I bring that up is when you do add, if you choose to add these vents to the shoulder piece section here, that's going to really flatten out. There's really not a ton of shape that's going to be going on in this piece. Let me just try and paint this in real quick. There's not going to be a ton of shape going on, so it's not going to look busy if you decide to add this little vented piece here as well. I think that would be fine. I think that would work okay. If you were to just dot in your vent stuff here, something like that. I'm not saying you have to stick with that exact design, but think about it. Like I said, in the email, you did a really nice job breaking up this shoulder piece. It's a beautiful shoulder piece. It really is. Like, it's good stuff. You have the big, large main shape, which I'll just try and draw this out here. And I want you to tell me if this is kind of how you were thinking, because the way I see you designing, this is kind of how I would have designed it myself with this shape. So you have the large shape here, the nice silhouette. Then it looks like you subdivided here, so you have kind of a top and bottom. Then you subdivided that further there, and then you did your smaller subdivisions there, and there, and add the dot there.
I mean, that's relatively how it went.
Sure.
That little left piece, the like triangle extruding part.
Yeah, this bit.
Yeah, that was supposed to kind of be like a connector, like a swivel almost for the bottom plate to kind of connect to.
Yeah, it looks like a hinge here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know if that made sense. I figured when I rendered it out, it would.
It'll make sense when we actually add a bolt of some kind. And if you want to add some sort of like, there's some sort of line here. It doesn't have to look exactly like a screw. You can even cut in like a little triangle or something like that. Whatever kind of techie thing you want to do for that. That'll start to make sense. In its current state as just a dark dot, there's nothing that really shows me that there's more structure going on underneath that. But I think the minute you add like a plug or a bolt, I think you're going to be all right. I think that'll be fine. I also like what I mentioned in the email. I like kind of this smooth, curvilinear. Let me get this contour to the neck piece. I think that's a nice shape, and I like how you introduced this back. This was kind of something that you had in your first version, this one here, and I did like that, and I wanted to see if you were going to bring that back, and you have. That's a nice.
A lot more successful than what I had before.
It's a nice little shape there. I really like that. I think that's cool. There's also this piece going on down here. You darkened up this section of the belt, the utility belt. And before, I think it looks like you had it as almost a lighter value, and then you were probably thinking like cast shadow, or turning shadow. She's turning away from the light source, so that's probably going to get darker. I think that's okay. What I would do though is, and this is what I want to talk about tonight. We're going to get into like rendering techniques. What I would do is separate with value some of this material. So if you have belt loops, I would make them a lighter value. I probably went a little too bright there. We can probably tone that back, and keep that as a lighter value. So that the darker belt piece can pass underneath, and you just have another level of depth. Where it is now, everything's kind of the same material. It's all sort of the same value, and so it's hard to get some nice separation there. So value is a way we can push and pull that, and it could be the opposite too. You could have a lighter belt if you'd like. It doesn't have to be a light strap on a dark belt. Basically, contrast is nothing more than a light shape on a dark shape or a dark shape on a light shape. And wherever you have contrast, you're going to have visual interest. So we don't want to draw too much attention here, but I would like to see those separated a bit. So that being said, where did you envision kind of the next stage going here? Because I know we've been moving a little slower, and I'm okay with that if you're okay with that.
Yeah, I'm okay with it. I honestly feel bad. Like, I feel like you're almost I don't want to say that you're disappointed, but you expected me to go faster.
Okay, and
Just
that's and I did honestly I did I didn't know this is a learning experience for both of us.
yeah.
So now that I know that you know we're gonna be taking the pace just a little slower, I'm fine with that.
Okay.
You know I don't want you to feel pressured that this is like you're a failure or this shit isn't like working out the way you wanted it to. Like don't that's the worst thing that we could have happen.
Yeah.
So I just wasn't sure uh, just how slow we were going to have to kind of take this, and that's okay. That's fine. Now that we know that, we can work with that. Uh,
Yeah.
so going into this next stage, I want to talk about rendering, and I think I'm going to save color for later because if
Okay.
I start throwing on like rendering techniques and color, I feel like that might be
Yeah,
too
that's gonna be
much.
too much.
That's going to be a bit much to bite off all tonight. So that's why I wanted to ask you about how your pacing was feeling and how you were feeling about all this stuff.
Yeah. I have one more question about design before we get off that topic.
Okay.
You see, like right on, it's like right near her right breast, that little plate that comes out.
Oh, here we go. Hold on. Me. Yes. Yes. Yes.
Should I extend that or just get rid of it? Because I wanted it to kind of be just like a flat plate, pretty much just going straight out. Does that make sense?
You're talking about this light plate right here.
Yeah.
Okay.
I didn't know if that like
I don't think.
it's not helping, I feel
Well,
like.
I like I the thing that I do like about it is the lighter value because it's got a kind of nice repetition. We have a dark shape next to a light shape going into a dark shape and then another darker shape. So
Hmm.
there's some nice range of value and pattern separation across those four objects. That part I do like. As far as the jutting out, if you want to do that, what I would probably do is you could bring this back a bit. And I'm sort of afraid to do this because I don't know where let's see,
Foreground.
choose the
Neck
foreground.
brace.
Okay.
Should be like neck brace. No, not neck.
Yeah. Is that
Up.
further up? Here we go. Here we go. Oh, we got neck brace,
Or maybe chest piece.
chest
Yeah.
piece. Yeah, here we go. Okay, okay. So what I would do is just slide it back, make it more like a tab
Okay.
instead of having it jut out so far. Because again, that's sort of a question we can ask ourselves: is what purpose does it serve jutting out like that?
Yeah.
It's a nice shape, but what if if there's a situation where she's got to like move her gun up and over right in front of her chest? What if that gun gets caught on this metal plated lip hanging
Yeah.
out over the breast? Um, so like I said, it's a nice shape. I don't want to eliminate it entirely. So for that, just make it smaller, reduce it, and slide it back in. And then you still have that cool like separated pattern without being a hindrance to the design. Um, you also did a nice job. I like how, and I think I mentioned this in the email. You didn't isolate the breast as much with this
Yeah.
update. Was that something that you did consciously, or were you
Yeah.
just okay? Okay.
Yeah.
So
I was like, man, her tits are fucking huge. They need to be
okay,
gone.
and
Like,
that's another thing that can be really actually. You know what? I want to show you something. This was a situation that David Kay ran into, and he was asking me to look at one of his designs, and I had to bring this up with his stuff. Let's see, where it was his. Oh, where are you, David? I think he's got. Wasn't it? Oh, here we go. It was this character, and he might have updated it on here. Oh, oh, damn it, David. All right. Well, anyway, he had a similar situation where the breast was feeling very, very isolated, um, and it was unfortunate because the shape that he was using was actually really cool, and he was trying to mimic like a dragon scale on her armor, like her whole motif was dragon based. So it was a really cool shape, but for the position that it was in, it was very eye catching in a bad way. It was just
yeah.
highlighting her breast, and it was a brighter value than everything else around it. So when you have that level of contrast, if you have this sea of a dark shape, and then there's just this tiny little white dot in the middle, fucking that's everyone's eye is going to go to that white dot, and that's kind of what was happening with him. With you, it was a bit more subtle as far as value, but shape-wise, it was a very large, bland, soft, round shape. And I'm just
Yeah.
glad. I'm telling you everything you already know, which is really good that you're able to spot that and identify where the issue is. Um, and that's probably honestly when you go into your next image, your next female character design, if you're doing something that's similar as far as sci-fi along these lines, that's now a problem spot that you're going to be able to design around ahead of time. A lot
Hmm.
of this whole game is anticipating where issues are going to come up before they even come up. And in all honesty, like, the way you build that muscle is just by doing a shit ton of painting. Like, you've painted so many different things that you recognize where those problem areas are, and so you design confidently and successfully around those problem areas before you even get into it. At this
Yeah.
stage, you're early on in your design career and painting and all that stuff, so this is all kind of crash course for you. But it's good that you're building that mental confidence to recognize this stuff and take care of it ahead of time. That's good. That's good. That's really good.
Thank you.
um, so rendering and getting into our whole setup here as far as painting goes. I want to continue. We're going to keep going with the black and white. Like we said, we're not going to mess around with color. So that should make your job that much easier because
Yeah.
we're only going to worry about our values. What I'm going to do is, and if you want to keep these separate, by all means, this is really good that you're building these layers. I like how you're using the folders now, so you have some nice separation between everything. For me, I'm going to merge your character so that I can kind of deal with her stuff quickly.
Yeah.
Um, so one of the things that I try to do when I'm thinking about a character design and our shape breakup and everything, let's put that gun back on. Is try and pick out where my areas of dark and where my areas of light are going to be. And you've already started to do that. But one of the things that I'm seeing right now is that there's a lot of stuff that isn't very confidently light and confidently dark.
Hmm.
And that's fine. This basically everything that's on here right now is somewhat middle groundy. There's everything. There's nothing that's pushed, extremely dark, and there's nothing that's pushed extremely light. So this gives us a nice range to play with, and that's the way I like to keep my character design for in the beginning stage when I'm designing for quite a while. I don't like to push extreme dark and extreme light from the get-go because then I feel like sometimes I can get carried away with my values and things can get a bit too contrasty a bit too quickly. So one of the things that I like to do when I start to separate my shapes, right now because we have everything kind of in the middle ground section, what I'll do is I'll actually, if I have a full figure like this, I can duplicate it just by hitting Control J. But for you, if you want to be more controlled about it, you can actually just paint this stuff in, and that might actually be quicker for you too. I'll kind of show you. I'll show you both ways here. What I want to do is I want to pick out all the spots that are going to be a lighter value. And when I say lighter value, I want things that are like confidently a lighter value. So for that, I'm going to use a screen layer. And are you pretty familiar with a handful of these layer modes?
Oh yeah. Yeah,
Okay.
for sure.
Okay. All right. So if there's anything that I say as far as like what layers do what, or I don't explain that, just let me know and I'll try and explain to you how it works. But since you know some of this stuff, I'm not going to go over it right now. So with a screen layer, I'll just pick kind of a lighter middle ground look that or my lighter middle ground value that we have on here, and I'm just going to go over different sections of this piece that I feel could be popped up to be lighter. And there's nothing you can see as I'm painting over this, like there's areas that are actually getting a bit like washed out. Like we just lost all our vents there. That's fine. There's nothing wrong with that because we can actually bring that back without having to repaint a bunch of extra shit in there. Maybe even we could get down here, make this a lighter shape. I don't want to mess with that top one because that's okay for now. That's okay for now. Do something like this. And these are not by any means, the final look that I want you to do for this. This is just how these are shapes that I'm finding that you've already laid down that I think look kind of cool and could look cool with a lighter value. If you find other stuff as you're going through this, as I'm sure you will, then that's fine too. Play around making those shapes lighter yourself. Don't feel like my design that I do here is law.
I might ask if I don't know if you have like a good leather tutorial or if you know of anyone who paints leather really well because that shit's fucking hard.
Leather's difficult. Leather's really difficult. It really depends on how reflective and how specular and shiny or how matte that material really is. So I'll show you how I would go about doing this leather for now. But before we do that leather, I want to get all these lit shapes in here. You said maybe we'll even. You can see what I did right here is I selected this darker value, so I'm still on a screen layer. It's just not going to get as blown out because the layer or the value that I'm painting with now is darker than the value I was painting with previously. And if that gets a little too light, then we can just use a soft round brush and knock that back a little bit. And this could get lighter. Not white, but lighter. I kind of like that. We need to knock that back so we get a tertiary shape, or tertiary value, I should say. All right. And now I want to go over and do our dark shapes. And for that, you can use overlay. This is a nice piece to use overlay on because everything's in a middle value. Overlay, in my opinion, doesn't work all that well on a really bright value. But overlay works similar to multiply when you use a dark value to paint on this middle value shape here. So use overlay on this for now. Yeah, we're starting to lose that a bit, so maybe we won't do that. But that little tab there in between we could make darker. This shape, I do like the shoulder pieces. And you'll also notice I didn't say this here, but you'll notice that I've clipped these two layers to the object. Are you familiar with clipping?
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
That's kind of why I had everything separated. I do something that's kind of similar to clipping.
Okay.
I lock transparency.
Yeah.
That's why everything's separate.
Sure. That's a good one too. I've used that occasionally as well. That's fine.
It's just easier to paint with confidence, I think, because like I don't have to worry about going outside of the lines.
Yeah, exactly.
Like a fucking 3-year-old in a coloring book.
Exactly, and it's weird though, because some people I don't know, they feel like that's it's really bad. Like if you're an artist, like you should never paint outside the lines, and it's fucking bullshit. That shit's still hard. It's like drawing a straight line. It's like anyone says like, oh my god, you're an artist. I can't even draw a straight line. It's like drawing a straight line's fucking hard, dude. Don't sit there and tell me I know how to draw straight lines. It's hard.
My screen might be fucked up, honestly.
In what way?
Because I feel like I have a lot more contrast on my screen versus I feel like you're seeing a lot less contrast.
Oh, there's that could very well be because
it looks like straight black and then straight white almost.
Oh, is that like the stuff that I've added in?
Yeah, like I can't see any form.
Okay.
Um, maybe it might just be the low resolution.
I don't know. I could definitely see it being a monitor issue. Maybe the monitor is calibrated a bit either too high or too low.
Do you have an
Um,
iPhone?
I don't. I
No.
don't. I have a Samsung. I got my Note 3. So let me here.
I was gonna say I can like text you the image and see if the contrast is different. I don't know if.
Try.
Yeah,
You can
see like
try it.
that right there.
You
Yeah,
can
I
try
mean
it.
I'll send it to you.
You can
It's
try it.
not gonna be the super updated version, but I feel like
Yeah,
you'll
that's
still
fine.
be able to see.
That's fine. And I'll just knock these back. I'll just drop the opacity on these a little bit. So
Well, I mean that's a problem that I'm gonna have to solve
well,
also.
yeah, it is. It is, and I'm glad you brought it up because I wasn't aware of that. So it'll be we'll work with it. We'll work with it. These belt loops make that shape. I don't want it to be. I kind of like the idea of darkening up this buckle so it's almost like black metal, but
Yeah,
then we could scratch up the edges and give it like edge wear so that you have lighter shapes within that.
yeah. Kind of like what I did with the shoulder pieces. A
Uh,
little bit more extreme.
I would go more extreme, and we'll get into that. That's another thing we'll get into. Don't worry about that. If because that's kind of also how I design stuff is I paint things. I tend to paint things clean and then dirty them up.
Hmm.
Um, because in my head, I feel like that gives me a level of control. Whereas if I make everything dirty from the get go, and there are areas that I want clean, I feel like it's more difficult to clean it up than it is to make it look more dirty, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
For me, that tends to be just it's a control issue. I'd rather things be clean, and then I can selectively choose to beat them up where I want. In this shape, what's this shape right here? Is this another belt loop? It looks like
Yeah.
going around the outside. Okay,
It's kind of weird.
it's okay. We could probably cut that back a little bit, but I wanted to darken it a bit because it'll separate from this white beam that we have in the background. Whereas before it was kind of it was the same value almost as that.
Hmm.
So I'm just adding a level of separation there by darkening that portion. All right. So you can kind of see. I mean, there's not much here, and I think this could even be taken further. But being able to get in here and actually start selectively patterning your stuff out a little bit, is going to make this feel a bit more. It's going to give you another level of detail because you're dealing with multiple values across the object.
Hmm.
Whereas, I guess, this is unfortunate to say because it sounds like on your monitor you were doing that already. Um,
Hmm.
but when I'm seeing it just felt everything was very similar in value.
Yeah, what I'm seeing like right now is like I completely lost the circle that you were just painting. Like I can't even see form on that right now.
Okay,
That's something I'm gonna have to check out.
let me bring that back a bit because it was getting dark, but I mean, there's still on my
Yeah, you
monitor
can
anyway.
totally
There's some
still see
nice
it.
separation. There's some all right separation there. Okay. So I'm gonna and actually let me I'll keep the old version here. So every change that we make, we can kind of just start flicking this on and off and see how far we've come with it. Um, so the next thing, once you get all your value patterns in place, the next thing that I like to do is start separating your materials as far as their specularity. So what's shinier and what's more dull and matte.
Hmm.
And the thing that I've been doing recently, and I think I've told this to you before, and I think you were telling me that you've been using this technique too. Have you used the color dodge, painting with white and
Hmm.
setting the layer to black? So you're familiar with that already?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the thing to keep in mind when you're painting metal, and that's why I like this method so much, is because it mimics metallic surfaces really, really nicely. So let me look at here. Pictures, clients, incarnate. Let me see, where's my ref? Here we go. And there's some decent ref images in here. That one's all right. I wanted to get one that's kind of outdoorsy. Here we go. All right. So this is an all right one. I like this. The thing, especially when you're dealing with something like this where it's chrome and silver, it's the most apparent when it's in this silver chromey look. But the thing to keep in mind with anything that's extremely reflective is that it's essentially, you know, you're reflecting the objects around that image. So let me, sorry, I'm going to pull this up in Photoshop instead. Can I just like drag this in maybe? No, okay. And this is where your like material studies and stuff will really start to come into play. Knowing just how reflective things can really get. So the nice thing, like I said, about silvery chrome stuff is that it essentially is reflecting and mirroring everything around it. So these are not arbitrary values within this metal. I'm going to show you, darken this, and now I can illustrate this point. This, for instance, this highlight right here, and this highlight right here, and this highlight right here, all three of those spots are facing up towards the sun. So when you look at that metal, you're actually just looking at the sun. You'll also notice this shape right here. Within
the building.
It's either the building or the tree line. It's some dark shape that's going through that object. And then everything else around that that's blue is obviously the sky. So as long as you understand that the stuff down here is reflecting the ground, so these are actually warm shapes because it's all the dirt that's getting bounced back up into the underlit stuff. The more you understand that concept, the easier it's going to be to paint reflective surfaces. The next thing, once you understand the reflection, then all you have to really do is understand the value. So a shape that is black, that's very, you know, it's a dark, the local value of that shape is very dark. It's also reflecting the environment, but it's got a level of value that's set on top of it. So it's not going to be showing as much of the value information as a silver chrome metallic shape. They're both shiny. They're both extremely shiny, but one of them is actually darkening a lot of those. It'll darken a lot of those middle values. It's still going to reflect, if it's very, very polished, it's still going to get your very extreme bright highlights, and it's still going to give you your really deep dark shadows. But a lot of the middle section of that stuff is going to be somewhat subdued and a little bit darker. The opposite's true with something that's a white object. With that, things are going to get a little washed out. Your shadows are not going to get as dark. Your highlights will be very dark, but your shadows are not going to be. You generally on a white object, if we're going to have like a pearly white cue ball, generally your shadows are not going to get very, very dark.
Kind of like snow almost.
Exactly. The shinier it is, the darker that object, the darker that reflection is going to get. But even so, because the local value is white, it's just a little bit lighter. And the further away from that object the reflection is, the softer that reflection is going to be. The closer you get, the more true to the value of the reflection it's going to be in that particular object. But you have to keep that in mind when you're going through this stuff. So the reason I bring that up is when we do our technique here with the color dodge, and let's say we use white, and we do a nice strip through these three objects. I'm not saying that this reflection is accurate. It's not. But I'm putting the strip here so you can see what's happening with the values. You can see how we have our dark shape right here. So this is our darkest value. I'll get rid of this for now. This is our kind of a middle value, and this is probably our lightest value. And if you look at how the reflection works on all three of those, do you see how it's kind of mimicking that idea? Like
Yeah.
this, the highlight on our lightest value is extremely bright. And it's only going to get darker as we shift over, these three objects. And that was all with one strip of that color dodge layer. That's why I love that layer so much, because it keeps the underlying values sort of intact and accurate to what a reflection on that object will actually be. It's a really, really nice technique. Whereas if we were to do something like a linear dodge layer, and we take white, if we do a strip across the whole thing, it's the same value from start to finish. This value is not really changing
Yeah.
across all of those objects. But with this, that's a really nice nice little glow there, a nice little reflection. So that's where I start with this stuff. I would start finding the things that you want to be kind of very reflective and polished, and find the things that are going to be not so reflective and polished. Maybe they're a bit more matte, maybe they're more scratched and beat up. There's going to be a level of thinking and thought that's involved when you start deciding what objects are shiny and what objects are more matte. So, as an example, what I would start to do is go through this. And again, you're going to have to think about your light source. We decided from the get-go, and if you have to do this, sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. If we have to do this, you could even put in a little arrow to remind you where that light is coming from. It's this direction, and at what angle is it coming from? So is it pointing more towards the viewer, in which case this cone is away from us, or I'm sorry, coming towards us, or is it more side on, where it's straight like that, or is it the other direction, where it's going away from us and we can actually see the back of that cone?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking, more
Okay.
along the lines of.
So the only thing that I would say if we were to do a light source like this one here, where it's more away from us,
Mhm.
her face, at least at the angle that I've drawn this light source right now, that's kind of front lighting.
Okay.
And so her whole face is going to be illuminated with that particular angle. If you do something that is more strong side lighting, you're going to have something that's split a little more half and half. And generally what we like to do when we're lighting faces is you want something that's either 30% light and 70% shadow, or vice versa. You want something that's 70% light and 30%
Yeah,
shadow.
I was thinking about vice versa.
And that's kind of what it looks like you have here. It looks like you're leaning on about 70% light
Yeah.
and 30% shadow, and that's fine. That's good. That's what you've
Now
built.
tell me if I'm right in this decision. I decided that light source because I feel like we're gonna get a lot better shadows on the actual canvas part of them going off screen. I feel like it's gonna look better.
On the canvas part of the.
Like,
Explain that to me a little bit.
if we had extreme side lighting, his shadow is gonna be really tiny because it's gonna go behind the generator. Her shadow is not even gonna be on screen.
Right. Right.
And then if we have the one that I said,
Uh-huh.
um, I feel like hers is gonna go diagonal towards the generator, and his is gonna
I
go
see what you're
diagonal.
saying. I see what you're saying. So you'd have like her shadow is probably coming up here. It might even hit the generator, go up.
Yeah.
I see. Yeah. No. Absolutely. Absolutely. And you can kind of use that as that's something that we can work into with this is sort of a directional cue where you're helping lead the viewer's eye with shadow and light to the generator there,
Yeah.
which is a really nice. That's a slick trick. You're learning. You're learning. I get this. Good.
Thanks, man.
So anyway, the reason I bring up that directional light is we're going to want to make sure we keep that in mind when we start placing our highlights for our main character here. So if it's coming in, it's probably hitting this here. probably getting a nice.
And you can also paint with like grays and stuff, correct? If you don't want it to be like say since the sun is just hitting the horizon like that golden hour, it's not going to be, correct me if I'm wrong, it's not going to be as bright as you think it would be.
It depends on if you're going for the photographic look. It depends on the exposure of the camera that's shooting the photo.
Okay.
When you use your own eyesight, and you look at things that are in that golden hour, then typically, yes, in reality, that sun is not, when it's striking someone's skin, especially if they're a Caucasian person and they have a much lighter complexion. It's not going to, usually it's not going to hit extreme bright white because it's the golden hour, so you need some value to show off all that beautiful yellow and orange look. You can't get that if you go to straight white. That's what you see in reality. But when you shoot with a camera, it's a whole different ballgame.
Yeah.
In fact, you bring up a good point. I want to show you.
So would you paint with grays and not whites? Like, would you put that harsh of a reflection on there, or like?
For me, I would put that reflection in there right now, because then we can go back and decide how much color we want to re-add to that later. Yeah. It's a lot of push and pull that I've learned with my values. I don't usually get my values dead on from the beginning. There's a lot of back and forth that happens when I'm working through a painting. Let me show you. I want to get back to this real quick. Find an example. This is kind of this is almost getting into like HDR lighting, which is HDR lighting completely fucks the entire idea of what I just explained, because HDR lighting tries to get the best the widest range of value in both the darks and the lights, and your eye just doesn't see that way. This is how your eye typically looks somewhere in between. Can I make this smaller? Yeah. Your eye looks somewhere in between this right here and this right here. Because essentially in real life what would happen is that you would get, in this image, the sunset and the sky has a really nice value range. We have nice color from the sun on the horizon. You've got all these beautiful like pinks in the clouds. The ocean's getting some good reflection. It is very bright in the center of the sun, and that's fine. You're staring directly at the fucking sun, so it's bright. That's understandable. But all of this stuff down here, as far as the rocks go, really dark. And in reality, you're probably not seeing it that dark. In reality, you're seeing something that's closer to this image, and it may be even as light as this image. So if we were to mimic reality, you're going to get basically these rocks somewhere in between these two rocks and this sunset with the waves. The problem when painting an image like that, though, is that typically you're not you don't get very rich darks that way, and you don't get really nice contrast. And that's something that happens naturally with a camera. You can see with the f-stop on this stuff, and the time, actually the f-stop's the same on all these, but if you look at the time that it's taken, this one in the top left here was taken at 1/60th of a second. Everything's really dark, but that sun is gorgeous. The white's almost starting to disappear. We get really rich saturated color in there, and the white's almost gone. But to get that level of sensitivity, everything else has to get really, really dark. Whereas if you go down to something like this one, the sun's starting to get a little bleached out. The sky's getting really like whitewashed. It's very, very high key, very, very bright values. But these rocks look great. The rocks look awesome. There's lots of nice value, lots of nice color in there. They look really good. So that's the reason I say yes, you want that nice color, but if you're going for the photographic look, there's going to have to be a balance. And really, for me, again, that all comes from just pushing and pulling the values as we go through. Now, I got an email from you. Let's see. Is this your cell phone pic?
I sent a mood board and then a reference image, but there's a picture on the mood board that I really like, and
Is
then
okay on the mood board. Here we go.
and so it's
We've
the
seen
one
this one.
like
I've seen this
bottom
board before.
left,
Okay,
like
bottom.
right there. Your cursor is like right over it.
This one here
Nope,
or
to the
this one
right.
here?
That one.
Okay.
Is that something that you're looking for, like that saturated in the darks and the whites, or
This level of saturation I think is okay. We
a little
might
too much?
It might be a little much. We might tone it back a little bit. That blue is getting really, really, really blue in the shadows. Um, and if we're trying to straddle the line a little bit between realism and a painted illustration, we might tone that back just a little bit. This one in the top right, when we talked about this before,
Mm-hmm.
I love that color. I love palettes like that. But it's very
That's hard as shit.
desaturated. It's very desaturated. There's not a strong light source. It's very moody, but that can be a pretty difficult scene to paint because your level of control over your values has to be spot on. It's got to be a very I don't want to say a tight value range, but you'll notice really nothing in here is getting extreme white. We're getting
Hmm.
really close on this cuff and glove of her hand here, it looks like, and maybe even up in the sky. But if you bring that into Photoshop, at least on my screen, I doubt that that's going to get to extreme white.
Yeah.
I doubt it. And that's why I try to not push extreme white and extreme black from the very beginning. Because you can start to blow out your scene and get really, really contrasty really, really quick. And that is something that has the potential to happen here with this technique too. And if you feel like if it is getting a bit too strong, that's okay. Just tone it back. Just grab your black and slowly glaze over the top with a soft round brush. That's what I use as a soft round brush. And this soft round brush is set to pressure sensitivity.
Mm.
So when I'm painting, if I go really soft with it, that's one thing. And if I go really hard with it, it's going to get that much more blown out.
Yeah.
Vice versa, if I go really soft, I'll knock this back. And if I go really hard, it's going to eliminate everything in that stroke. So that's why I like to use this particular brush for doing all these blooms and reflections and lighting effects. Eventually, there's going to be some hard highlights in here somewhere, and for that, I'd rather just use a hard round brush. And we can really get in here and knock out. Okay, there's my dot of the sun. There's a nice shape right there, and we can really get hard with that. But when we're just glazing in our highlights, I use the soft round. I think
Okay.
it's a nice shape. Does that make sense? Is there
Yeah.
anything that I don't know how much you already know or how much you don't know, but this is how I choose to control my highlights using this technique.
Yeah. That's the way I do it, or
Okay.
that's the way I have done it.
Okay. All right. Good. Good. Might put in the other thing that I like to keep in mind when we're doing this stuff, especially when it comes to rounded metal. This is kind of a good example of it. You'll notice that generally there are a couple bands of light within bands of dark. So we see that most prominently on the arm here. This is a cylindrical shape, yes?
Mm-hmm.
So it's a rounded tube, and it's bending the light and the reflection of everything around it. So what's actually happening here is that if this was a mirror, if this was a flat object, right? Let's just say this is our mirror, and it's just a rectangle, square, whatever. If we're looking at this, and this is a mirror, it's reflecting everything that's directly behind us. Or basically, it's reflecting us and everything directly behind us. So if we were to look at it from a arrow point of view, if this is the side of that arrow, from a side view, the front of that arrow is like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's pointed directly at our face. What's different about this is that when you have a cylindrical object like this, you're curving the objects around that mirror. So now you're not just reflecting stuff behind us. Essentially, right in the middle is where you would get that.
So would it kind of be like a 5-point perspective almost?
You could, I suppose you could think of it that way. All you really need to understand is that now we're not reflecting things that are right in front of it. We're also reflecting things that are over here, and we're
Mhm.
reflecting things that are over here, and we're compressing it in this shape. So the way I see that on this arm is that we got this nice highlight of the sky here. And I shouldn't I hesitate to even call this a highlight because what this actually is this looks like the side of the building right here. This looks
Mhm.
like grass or some kind of tree line that's happening here. This is sky in the middle. We have sky all along here. And then this shape almost looks like it's a cameraman. I can't tell exactly what it is, but it could be, it might be a cameraman, it could be another tree. This shape goes all the way up here. So I can't tell what it is, but it's obviously another shape that's blocking the sky.
I think
But
that's a pointy tree. I guess that's pointless, but it's a tree.
it could be a tree. It looks like it looks like it could be a tree. I don't know. It's an interesting shape.
I don't know why I just said that.
It's an interesting shape.
It is.
Um,
Now that actually brings me, because I was thinking, I didn't know if you wanted trees, like, because we're that really close, the cliff in my background.
mhm.
I didn't know if a tree back there would show space.
So yeah. So trees.
Is that dumb?
No, no. I'm not going to say that trees are dumb, but trees have a hard time surviving at really high altitudes.
Okay.
Uh, and I only know that because I live in Colorado. But you'll
Hmm.
notice that if you look at a lot of stuff, if you look at Mount Everest, uh, there's
No
no
trees.
fucking trees up there, dude. There's no trees. And that's another element that kind of helps to push this scene and sort of emphasize the height that they're at because there are
Hmm.
no trees. If you start putting a bunch of trees in here, it could start to, I don't know, in a scientific sense, I guess it starts to make them feel like they're a little bit lower
Hmm.
to the ground because trees are now surviving in that area. But if this is
Yeah.
a harsh snow and wind beaten and battered environment, trees are not surviving up there, and it kind of
Yeah.
adds to the I guess the harshness, for lack of a better word, to their scene. Um, anyway, back to this reflection that I want to say. You know, you have this. Well, I guess it's a tree. We'll say it's a tree. You say it's a tree. I'll say it's a tree. I don't care what it is. It's just a dark shape. I don't give a shit what it is. What I wanted to bring up was this right here. You get another highlight right here, and that's really important. You're also getting that down here on the elbow, so you get your highlight of the sky, right? The sun's getting reflected here. There's a dark shape right here, and now there's another light shape going back into a dark shape, and then a light reflection of the ground. So there's a lot of value shifting
Hmm.
that takes place on a curved surface like that. And so I basically I try and think as critically as I can about where those reflections are coming from, but at the end of the day, it's kind of just faking it until it looks accurate, you know, until it looks right. So if we start, we'll say that we got a highlight on this arm that's reflecting. This is the snow that's getting bounced from the side of this mountain here, and we'll say we'll throw another highlight in probably right, I don't know, right here if we want. And if we want, we can throw in another highlight here. Now, the difficulty happens when you do this is kind of what happened right here. When I added that highlight, it actually changed. Do you see how that almost changed the form of that
Hmm.
of that object? Now, instead of being what you had initially of just a nice curved shape, now you have something where it's okay, flat, and then there's a dip here, and then this comes up and that curves that way. So that's another thing that can really add some interesting design elements to your objects is by using light and shadow, you're actually reshaping some of the plates underneath. Maybe you don't like that. Maybe that's not, that doesn't contour. That doesn't give you the right contour that you want. That's fine. You can just get rid of it and keep it. Then okay, well, we don't want to put a highlight there. That's going to look, it's going to reshape my forms, and that's not what I
Hmm.
want. So for me, this is where a lot of this stuff comes into play. It's a lot of sort of trial and error. And as far as design goes, you're thinking, like I said, you're thinking critically about where this stuff will actually be, but at the same time, it has to start to have a level of believability. Um, you don't have to get so analytical about a lot of this stuff a lot of the time when you're trying to do an illustration that is, like I said, it's kind of bridging that gap or borderline photoreal and painterly illustration. If we're going for photoreal, extreme photoreal matte painting type shit, then there's a lot of thought that has to go into this stuff, and you really have to sit down and try and figure this out. There's still a level of experimentation that comes in with that. It's not always a direct science, but if that's the look you want, then you're going to have to spend some time looking into how these things operate, how these things work. We'll go through, probably getting hit a bit on her glove here. You'll notice I'm using this same color dodge technique on other objects in here that I don't intend to be metallic, but it gives me, I can still use it to build form.
Yeah.
It's not like, oh, you can only use this on metal. It really comes down to value. What value is it giving you when you lay it down? And if it's giving you the right value, you don't even have to change your tool. Just keep using that same tool on this object. The other thing is it builds up kind of nicely. So we have, like, on this dark shape, if we just keep going over it, like, it'll start to build. And that's, like, what I just put in there was too intense. But you can see how that would help on other objects. You don't have to, like, add layer after layer after layer. You just sort of keep scratching away at it. I use this to add little. This is our edge wear, so we're adding the white light value scratches into the buckle. And all I did, I'm still using a soft round brush. I just made the size smaller, and because it's a soft round, but it's really small. That gradation starts to tighten up, and so it feels like a harder edged brush. You don't have to actually physically switch to a hard edged brush. You can just make your brush size smaller. You scratch in all your edge wear. Think about where the nicks are getting, where it's getting scratched up, and where those edges are, because you have two edges here. You got one edge. Get rid of this. You got one edge on this side, right here, and you have another edge on this side. So which side is getting hit with the highlight will kind of also help determine that shape. I've chosen to put it on the bottom shape so that essentially we're seeing the top of the lip of that object, and it actually gives it a bit more thickness and separates it a bit from the other two plates that we have right above it. If you want to go the other direction, then we can do that too and see what that looks like. We'll kill that and put that highlight on this side instead. And this would almost, you could even argue that this would be more accurate for your vantage point, because we're looking up at her character, yes? So you'd be seeing the underside of that lip. But it comes down to what forms you want to have. Just by adding a simple highlight like that really helps to define what those forms are doing. That form that we had on before gave some added thickness to the design there. And if that's something that you like, don't be afraid to keep that in. Same thing over here. This edge is probably getting hit with that sun as it's coming in. This edge will probably get a nice, crisp, sharp highlight in there. And if it's too much, we can knock it back. We can knock it back later. There's nothing wrong with that. I'm really afraid of what this looks like on your monitor, because I know you said your values are different.
Actually, when you zoom in, it gets a lot better. I feel like it's just the resolution.
I see. All right. So those are really loose, and there's nothing too crazy going on. But you can see, just from where sort of it was, where everything felt matte and flat, almost like clay. How using different value separation. So we made some shapes darker, some shapes lighter, and then getting our highlight layer on there is starting to turn some of those forms.
Yeah.
And giving us some really decent depth. And that's, for me, that's a lot of what rendering ends up being, is just seeing, okay, well, how is that highlight working on this particular shape? Something that I'm not liking that I see on this right now, and let me go back, is that I have two highlights on this object. And I probably should have thought about that. I was getting a little careless here. You can see how I got two highlights on the neck piece right there and there.
Mhm.
So what that's probably doing is that it's looking like, okay, that's curving up, this is going down, it's curving up, and then that goes down. And that's probably not the shape you had in mind. So we're going to want to make that, if that's going to be a continuous curve, probably just get rid of that. And if we want, we can maybe make that highlight a little bit larger. Now that feels more like we have our continuous curve across the form without any major dips in between. So that's more or less how I sort of deal with metal and some of that other stuff. Now you talked about the leather. So when I'm doing leather, which isn't all that often, because to get really polished leather, like I've been doing the fantasy art shit for the last like 2.5, almost 3 years. There's not a lot of polished like biker leather, you know what I mean, or
Yeah.
latex type stuff. So a lot of that leather ends up being very dull. But on my character, when I was doing, here I'll show you what I did for her. And this was kind of a nice way that I broke down the leather on her initial concept pieces. Come on, here we go. So these guys, these leather arms right here, all started with black. I made it dark. If it wasn't black, it was damn near black. It was a very, very dark value. And what I did is I then gave it two additional values. I gave it a lighter value that was going to be my highlight line, and that was going to be going down sort of the core of the arm. And you can see that on the, go back. You can see that on this right piece here, the line is going right down the core here. And that was a fairly bright highlight, but it didn't hit white. You'll notice that's not as white as this white stripe that's on her upper arm here. And that's because it's a dark leather object. Now it is not, it's a dark leather object that is shiny. It is not, however, like black polished plastic. That is going to reflect a brighter highlight than what we have on the sleeve. So again, when you're dealing with highlights on these objects, you have to bring into play. You have to consider the local value of the object that you're lighting. And in this case, the local value is a black leather piece of fabric. It's shiny, but it's not so shiny that it's basically a black mirror. That's not the case. So it's a bright highlight, but it is not so bright. It's like I said, it's bright, but it's not fully white. Then I brought a secondary value, which was darker than my highlight, but noticeably brighter than my black center. I'm curious what this looks like on your monitor. Do you see any value separation between these two right here?
Yeah.
You do. Okay. All right. Good. So this object, this form right here, was me just thinking about, okay, well, its light is possibly hitting her jacket here and reflecting back into the arm right here. So it's going to get a lighter object, a lighter shape. It's probably picking up the light that's coming from this brighter gray strip of fabric on the hem of the jacket. So that's what I tried to keep in mind, is that, okay, well, we're reflecting this back into the jacket, but it's a black jacket. So that's going to drop the value that much further. But it's not as bright as our main highlight right here. And so that's, for me, that's how I try and turn form on leather like this. If you're going to do that with this piece, we can do this. Let's take that. I'm going to darken these pants a little bit. Give myself a bit more value to work with. So I'm going to use curves and just bring this down a bit because I don't want to affect the highlights that I have in there too much. If I drop this down, then my highlights start to go too. But if I bring that up, bring that curve up, you can see the pants are getting darker. The highlights are changing much more gradually because I like that piping that you have on the pants there. It's a nice little shape. So on our pants, we can go back. We can use our color dodge technique. If I fill it with black instead of pink. And so our highlight, our sun, is coming in from the left to the right. We have to keep that in mind. So it's going to be reflecting on this side of the pants. It's also hitting the light on the pipe here. This is probably getting just a bit too much, so we can knock that back. Soft brush, knock that back. Go. And then on the inside of the leg, we're going to be reflecting a lot of the stuff from the ground. A lot of the snow. I should call that snow because that's what that is, not stuff. And so we're going to get a softer highlight on the inside of this leg here. It's not going to get as bright as our main highlight because this is reflecting the sun.
Yeah.
But it's still highlight. And merge. What I do is I merge those two. And then this is where your reference comes into play. How is that leather draping around your object? And from here, you can really just color pick the values that you've laid out and make, try and maintain the curve that we've given over the leg. So we have our main, our reflection line here, our main highlight line here, and our core shadow here. As long as you sort of maintain those boundaries, you can start to work out the folds. I try and keep this. The reason I should say this. The reason I do it in this format is that I want to understand the curve of the big shape first. So that's why I put in my reflection lines first. Then I go back and redefine where our folds are. And that's going to, in some areas, that's definitely going to redefine where the highlights are because we're going to have little dips and valleys and everything that are happening in there. But I needed to get that. Those main light sources and reflected light, I had to get that figured out first. Then I can go back in and start adjusting the other folds of this fabric.
Yeah.
And the rule of thumb here, fabric is its own beast. But the thing that I try and keep in mind is, when you make the fabric very tight to the body, all you're really doing is you're rendering the body. If it's skin tight, you're just rendering the body. But the minute you start adding folds, just try and be cognizant of, okay, well, if it's looser fabric in the crotch area, so you got more movement here, you're going to have more fabric, which is going to be folded up. And where is that stretching over the form? If it's very baggy down below, you can have loose fabric down here, and then some pretty deep folds that are going up into the belt line, because that belt is actually compressing the waist of these, I shouldn't say jeans, of these pants. And so you're going to get some nice compression lines coming away from, or rather I should say funneling towards the crotch area. And this is where, like I said, your reference is going to come into play. Just get a bunch of leather reference. Look at tight leather. Look at skinny leather. Whatever the style of leather it is that you're looking at for these objects. So you can see, again, we turn this on and off, and I'll pair it with this. You can see how that leg is starting to turn.
Yeah, a lot better.
Right. And all you're really going to do is you're going to do that again on the second leg. However, um, this this area, clip it to that, do the whole color dodge thing again. I love this color dodge trick. This is Zapata that showed it in one of his demos. When I first saw this, I started realizing, oh, that's a fucking neat tool. I like that. I didn't realize that. With this, if we go as sort of bright as we have and as prominent as we have with this other leg, because this leg, there's nothing blocking it. It's facing out towards the sun. There's really nothing blocking it. However, I think her body is turned just a bit away from that sun. So we can minimize the amount of highlight on this leg because it's actually starting to fall away from the sun a tad. It doesn't have to be much, but we can minimize that highlight just a tad. And then here on the other side, pick it back up with our reflected light on this side. But again, this reflected light cannot get as bright as our main highlight because we have darker leather and reflected light can never, unless it's a light source in and of itself, it can never be as bright as the main light source. If it's just reflected light, it's not going to be as dark. It just isn't. I think the only time you can have something that's going to be as bright as your main light source is if this is a chrome material and it's reflecting a white material in the environment. So if her pants were actually like chrome, we could probably argue that it's going to start getting really, really bright white reflected light on the far side of her pants. But it's not, so it doesn't do that.
Yeah, that looks like 20 times better already.
Yeah, and it didn't take, I don't know, it didn't take that long, right? I know I've been rambling here, but it's probably, like a half hour maybe? Maybe a little more than that we spent painting?
We've been, I guess, painting-wise, probably about an hour.
All right.
But talking and painting, we've been in here for an hour and a half.
Yeah. All right. Well, there you go.
Yeah.
There you go. And when you're not sitting here talking and trying to do this at the same time, it might go a little bit faster for you. But you can see now, just by those changes, how those materials are starting to come to life. And her form is really starting to turn within the figure. And it's really a matter of just keeping track of, okay, is this a reflective material or is this a dull material? Is it a light material or is it a dark material? If you can answer those 4 questions, then you should know how to light that object. Mm-hmm. It's really as simple as it can get. I think sometimes the tendency that people have is to overthink how this stuff works, and that I can see where that can happen. I just spent, like we just explained, I spent like an hour talking about how this shit works. But when you do this and practice it on a daily basis, like it becomes second nature, it becomes muscle memory, and you don't think about it as critically. Like it's just like, okay, where's my light? Is this dark? Is this light? Is it shiny? Is it dark? Okay, boom, highlight. That's where it goes. And that's it. Like it becomes much more direct, and that's where that confidence comes from. The more you know, the more confident you can be about the actual painting process. So there you go.
Awesome.
I really what I would like to see, I think, in the next update from you is her getting her to about the state that she is now. Because for me, this is about as far as I would like to take it before I start adding color. We could push this further in black and white if we wanted, but for me, I think this would be a good stage that we could start adding color. For you, it might be different. If you're more confident with the black and white and you want to push this even further, go for it. That's going to make your painting time with the color a little bit less. It's really it's different for different people where their comfort level is when they start to introduce color. When I first started out, I wanted to render everything black and white like as far as I could possibly take it, and then add color. Uh, and that was okay, except for the fact that for a while my paintings looked very glazed. Um, because they were. I had just all I did was I glazed color on top of it. If you look at oh, you know what? It'll be in here. Um, Picture portfolio, student work. Look at. I was a senior, and I did. Okay, we'll even take this. All right, so with this piece, where's the final? Here we go. With this piece, there was a big. Okay, you can see where I added green, where I glazed in green. You can see where I glazed in orange, where I glazed in blue, where I glazed in purple. Um, and then you can actually see in areas, like on the top of his back, for instance, you can see where I color picked and then started painting on top of that.
Yeah.
In my head and the way I paint now, this is a very painterly approach. But if you don't take the painterly stage further than this, it's just going to look like what it is. It's very, very glazed,
Mhm.
and that has a very digital footprint, which is it's kind of a stigma in the digital world. When people see something like this, it's like, oh wow, that's really fucking digital, and it's unfortunate. And the way you can avoid that is by introducing color earlier on and finishing the painting with color that way. Or if you want to take your black and white and render it really, really far, that's fine. It's going to make your glazing stage really easy, because then you just glaze on the form and it looks really good. But you will have a whole painterly stage that needs to go on top of that, so it doesn't look so glazed. And I didn't know that. I didn't know how much further I needed to paint to really get away from that glazed look back then. I just didn't know.
So how do you feel about I guess this might be too soon to ask, but like color gradient, like masks? I don't know if
Yes,
you've used those.
I have.
But I was actually fucking around. There's actually a layer in there somewhere where I was just messing around with it. I don't
Take
know
a
if
look.
it's still in
Is
there or
that
not.
under?
It should have been foreground, like around her skin tone area. I don't know if it's actually
Well,
in
I
there or not.
merged all the layers, so I'm not seeing any gradient map in here.
Yeah, it's probably not. I might have
Okay.
deleted it, but I was like messing around with like the actual like color gradient maps and
Yeah.
getting all my whites to be yellows
This
and
is, by the way, this is a great palette.
yeah,
For
that's what I
the
was
kind of
going for.
look, yeah, for the kind of look that I think we're going for, that's a really nice palette. I think we could push some other colors in there, because right now it's very, very complementary. It's pretty much yellow, orange, and blue, yellowy, orange, blue. I think we could probably get some purple, very, very subtle neutral purples in there to push it even
Mhm.
further. But that's a great start. Sorry,
And what
I
kind
just
of an
wanted to say that.
accent color would you use, like lights wise? If we have orange and blue,
Hmm.
would you use like a, I don't want to say like a green?
So what I do when I'm going into this stuff is that it's so easy to change the color of that light.
It
Uh,
just doesn't matter.
it doesn't even matter. So what I
Okay.
would do is I'd probably, if you say like right off the bat, you're like, oh, I think they'd look really good. Like, yes, they're in a yellowy blue environment, but if they had really nice orange lights on their suit, do orange. And if it's too much and it doesn't look right, just hit Control U and you cycle through. I don't know if you're
Yeah.
familiar with that tool.
Like the hue
Yeah,
saturation.
exactly. And then you
Okay.
just cycle through your colors and see, oh no, green actually looks better. Like that,
Okay.
it's as simple as that. There's not a whole lot of thought that needs to be put into accent lights like that.
Okay.
As
Because
far
I
as
planned on having like light emitting from his computer. I
uh huh,
planned on having light emitting from the scope, the lens that we would be able to see right there,
sure, sure, sure.
all that. And I didn't know if those should all be the same color or.
It's going to be one more element that will unify them. If you choose to make like the lights on his suit and the lights on her scope the same, it's going to be an element that really unifies the two of them. Um, But the other thing we can think about is saturation. You know, these lights don't have to be really saturated. So if you have something that's actually more neutral, like it's more of a cool white light, uh, that could work too. It doesn't have to be like, oh, this light is fucking red, so it's going to be a red scope. Like,
God rays.
yeah, it's just it might be too much. And I think that's another thing that I didn't know how to handle when I was in school. I didn't like that's why this is the way it is. Like that background is blue and the shadow is purple and the light from the candle is orange and the light from this thing is green. Like it was too much saturation all at once and I didn't know how to balance that very well.
Hmm.
Um, Once I started working in a more desaturated style, that really started to refine my color palettes.
I'm
Um,
actually pretty happy the way that our timeline is going with my class with Kit right now, because
oh,
actually
cool.
right now I have an environment painting that I have to do, like digital coloring. That's
Okay.
a class I'm taking with her is digital coloring.
Yeah.
So she's actually going through all of these like how to push figures forward and like with colors and stuff. It's
Yeah.
actually pretty neat.
Awesome. Awesome. Yeah, she's a really good teacher. I was telling you, I had her for it was character design.
Hmm.
So
I
we
actually just stole her entire website that you guys used. She's letting me take
what?
everything off of it. The
What are you talking
website,
about?
the kitseaton.characterdesign.com or whatever.
Oh shit, I don't think I've been on there.
Really?
I think I remember her talking about it, but I don't know that I ever actually went on there. Because when we, like, was she using that to like have students submit work and shit for class?
Well, she's not using it anymore. This is like her old thing that she used to use.
Sorry, what was it again? I want to look at this. It's Kit Seaton.
Or here, I'll just link it to you. It's
Okay.
actually, and
I
then
want to see
the
if there's like old. Is there like old RimCAD work on there?
yeah, there is.
Oh, that's
There's
rad.
Vanessa Hayes, Sarah Lewis, Raul Ramos,
Yeah,
Paul
roll.
Gino,
Yeah.
Kat
Oh,
Zupin.
it's you got a password for it?
It's student.
Okay. Oh yeah, Raul. He's a cool dude. He's a badass.
That's a pretty good little website, honestly.
Oh man, I'm so excited. I want to look at these. Are they in the archives maybe? Oh, look at that! Look at that! Oh, that's funny. Cool. Well, anyway, yeah, no, she's a good teacher. I never had her as far as like digital painting. Um, so like a lot of the class that I went through with her was more focused on design and story, and students were kind of free to use whatever media they really wanted for a lot of the assignments. Um, Actually, here I'll show you. I have a character that I never finished for her class. Oh, this is funny. Let me
I
see.
feel pretty. I'm not trying to be an asshole, but I feel pretty good looking at some of this work. Like,
You should. You should. Because the stuff you're doing now, I wasn't doing back then, as you just saw. Here.
thank you.
Oh, come on. It was composition. I had her, I believe, as a senior. Um, oh, character design. Here we go. So this was one that we did. Uh, I don't even remember what the assignment was. I remember I was going to do a whole family of these really simple robots, and then it never really like came to fruition. Um,
A servant of two masters, maybe?
Maybe. I don't know. I have no
That was the
idea.
first project that you had because you have two guys over there.
I don't know. I can't remember. Actually, I think the first project we had was The Tempest, and we were doing stuff. I think it was a Shakespeare play, so we had to do a whole cast from The Tempest in our own theme. And so, like
Oh,
my
that's a cool
theme,
design.
thanks. It's so old. My theme was like cyberpunk, um, and so like these were the characters from that, like Miranda, Stefano, who was some drunk guy, I guess. Uh, Trinculio, Trinculo, I don't know.
Your
Um,
hands have really good character.
oh, thanks. It's all reference. Those are all my
I know
hands.
that's weird. Yeah, I know that's kind of weird to point out, but I don't know. I'm a
No.
huge fan of unstiff characters and unstiff hands. Like, I love it when the fingers like
Oh
flip
yeah.
out.
Grant does hands. I love the way Grant Griffin does hands. His hands are they're hands. They're fucking hands. Um, I like the way he does his stuff. But anyway, yeah, these were, and I never like. I feel bad. I don't think I ever really finished a project in Kit's class. That's why none of these are like painted. They're all just like glaze green. Um,
Hmm.
But anyway, the piece I was most proud of and still didn't finish was this guy. He was supposed to be this like
Oh wow.
techie ninja, and so I had done these orthos. I did this pose with him. He was supposed to be reaching for a sword, but you can't even see the sword handle, and it just looks odd. And this ortho, he's like falling forward, like his center of gravity is over his toes. He's totally falling forward in the side view.
Yeah.
But this was a cool piece. I was like excited to really make this one happen, and then I never really finished it.
You should totally like revisit that. That's kind of a cool. I really like the shapes on his legs.
Yeah, the shapes on the legs I like too. I couldn't. I remember that was actually a problem because the legs and the feet I really liked, but I didn't know how to incorporate it that well into his like ribs and the chest piece. So those feel very solid, and there's no. I look at it now, and I think I understand what the problem was. Like in the chest and the ribs, I just made it very solid. They were solid plates, and down here I had areas where it opened up. Around the kneecap, things
Very
were open.
fluid.
Yeah, there was a negative space that really felt like it contoured really really good to the body, but up here it was just chunky nothingness. He's got reverse
Mm.
abs. He's got this like pyramid on his chest, which doesn't fit with his physique. Like I don't know, it was a lot of odd stuff. But yeah, so that's what these were things that I did for. This was for Kit's class back then. God, oh, and I did this one too. This was fun. This was a fun one. These were like penguins that were going to be like fighter
Oh,
jet
that's pretty
pilots.
fucking cool.
But you'll
That's
see,
fucking awesome.
I actually I thought about redoing this idea that there was going to be like this this team of penguins that were fighter pilots, and I don't know. It was always really fun, but I didn't have the technical skill to execute it the way I wanted. So you can see like everything's really saturated. I didn't know how to handle my saturation, so everything's really really saturated. I didn't know like color wise how to break up a lot of different forms. So like a lot of their glasses and helmets and like this eye patch are pretty much all the same color as their skin, which is purple. I just didn't know. I didn't know how to break this stuff up. So it's cool that I'm gonna be excited when we get into color for you because I want to see how you handle this. Like you're doing really good with this value stuff so far, and the design. Like we've thrown a lot at you, and I think that's a good thing. I'm gonna be really curious to see how you handle the color stage. And there's a couple different ways a couple different techniques I want to show you for that. Color gamuts. Using, like you said, gradient maps, which is something I've only started using within the last like 6 months. But I love gradient maps now. Gradient maps are great. And then other blending modes, different blending layers. We'll go through all that. So anyway, has that given you? And we're still recording. Thank God, we're still recording, and it's on my screen, so we saw the whole thing the whole time. You can go back and watch this whenever you want once I get this stopped.
Fuck yeah.
But is there anything else that you're feeling uneasy about? Like I said, I just want you to move forward with the figures. Um, you know, wrap up their designs, address some of the spots that we talked about, get into the rendering, and then from there we can worry about rendering the rest of the environment, the gun, and then we can worry about the color stage.
Yeah, sounds good, man.
Okay.
I'm pretty excited about it.
Cool. Yeah, it's coming along good, man. It's coming along really good.
Thank you.
It's cool to see. I think the last piece I saw from you before we started getting into this was an environment scene. You had like 4 like stripper like red light district girls in these tubes.
Yeah.
It was on a sci-fi platform. That was the last piece I kind of saw from you. And
That's
I had
the last piece that I
I think-
finished.
okay, and it was cool because it was cool to see this now because I hadn't seen a nice strong balance between character and environment, and now you have both. And it was all that time and prep and composition and the thumbnails we did and all that shit and thinking critically about why these angles work and these poses work and these don't. And you did a lot of that on your own, which is awesome.
Thank you.
To see that you were able to, again, think critically about what's working, what's not, and I think the most important part is why is it not working, and what can you do to change it. So you were able to do a lot of that on your own, which is great. And I think supplemented with the things I said, with the things Corey said the other night last week, like it's coming along. It's coming along really good.
Thank you.
You should be proud.
Pretty excited about it, man. And thank you again for helping me out. Like it does mean a lot to me.
Sure. I hope you're getting something out of it. I don't. If it ever feels like a waste of time, and you're like, fuck, he's just telling me all the shit I already know. Like, that's probably like, that's okay, but tell me that.
Yeah, Dylan, I'm fucking tired of it. I fucking hate it, man. This piece is going nowhere.
That part is okay. You could say that. That's fine, and we could talk. The hardest part is going to be if you start telling me like, oh man, like after all the hangouts and everything that we did, like you didn't really teach me a whole lot. That is going to be like
really helping me.
Okay, good. That's the important part that I want to make sure is happening. Cool.
No, it's definitely the best help I've gotten ever. So
cool. Good night, Brittany.
You should totally be.
No, cool. I'm glad. I'm glad that it's working. And it seems to be.
Do you want me to? Do you want me to paint their faces?
Yeah. Well, I do and I don't, because the faces are kind of their own breed, and we're probably going to spend some time on the faces. I would like to get you at least on her to show where her eyes are looking. That can be a tough thing to do without it looking odd and awkward and like uncanny valley. But that's okay, because we're gonna. It's all going to come back to value. That's why we're in this black and white stage, I think, for as long as we are. We're going to be able to adjust that pretty easily with value without getting hung up on color. So at least get her eyeballs, the irises and the pupils. I want to know where she's looking. It looks like she's looking upward a bit for now, and that's great. Do that. Just get those in there so I can see where they're at. With him, I mean, what do you have planned for him? Is he going to be bald? Is he going to have a hood? Is he what do you want to do with him?
I was thinking about kind of like I don't want to say a man bun, but like kind of like how my hair is, how it's like shaved off on all around, and then the top is really long.
Okay.
I wanted to do that, but then kind of put it in like a little top knot. So that's what the hairstyle is called, is a top knot.
Have you? Oh, I'm curious. I want to see this. Okay.
You should look up men.
I was just gonna say. Here we go. Yeah. Oh,
doesn't that look pretty dope?
Yeah. Okay, this is really cool because have you ever seen Vikings?
Mm-hmm.
The show.
Bjorn. Yeah, that's why I got the haircut.
Dude, oh my God, he's Ragnar. Oh, wait. I'm not even typing. I love that show.
Yeah, it's perfect. I feel like it doesn't get enough attention.
It doesn't.
Like, everybody's like, Game of Thrones. Like, dude, this show is a lot more, like, brutal than Game of Thrones.
I like this show, I argue, almost more than Game of Thrones, because for me, and I think this is why people like Game of Thrones, is because it's so complex and rich, and there's so many characters and all that stuff. And for me, I feel like that's almost too much for me. I can't get invested to all these different characters all at once. With this show, it's kind of more on I don't want to say a single story track. As you know, it's simpler. And there's not a ton of magic. There's seers and shit, but like.
Well, this is all based on a true story too, which is kind of cool.
On a real person?
Yeah, this is all real.
Oh, I did not know that. I knew it was like a real like the Vikings, but I didn't realize it was based on a real person and his.
Yeah, that's why when you look up spoilers, there's no spoilers, because the fucking thing has already happened.
Oh, I didn't know that. I didn't know any of that. Interesting. So, did you see through season 2?
Yeah.
Oh, dude, that Blood Eagle scene, that was badass. Brutal.
I've wanted to paint that for a long time.
So badass. Oh, and the song that was playing, like, I looked up the band, and they're cool. They do a lot of stuff in that, chanting and drums and echoey shit. It's fucking awesome. But yeah, I love this show. This is great. Brittany and I started watching this.
This is actually. It's funny to bring him up, because that's actually who I was going to use for reference.
Oh, that's fine.
Because I like.
You gonna give him a beard too? The beard
I
and the mustache?
I wasn't. I don't know. I don't know. I haven't thought about it. The thing that I honestly struggle with, which I've honestly been like hounding down on myself, is just the way that depict. You know how you can't see his eye.
Mm-hmm.
You can't see it, and that's something that I can't grasp for some fucking reason. Like I can't.
On your image, you mean?
No, on like the image that you just had pulled up of
This
Ragnar.
one here.
Yeah, like you can't see the
Squint.
white.
Squint.
Yeah,
It's just a dark shape, dude.
yeah,
That's all it is. That's all it is. The quicker you realize that and you can simplify, you're absolutely right. You can't see the white because there's no fucking white.
hmm
There isn't any white. He's squinting, which is limiting the amount of white that's there, and his brow is casting a shadow. So whatever white you do see is going to be darker anyway. There is no white. It's a dark shape, and there's a little speck of blue. And that blue is not a very bright blue. It's a desaturated, in this shot anyway, it's a very desaturated and dark blue. That's all it is. And that's what makes for those really moody scene, like really moody looking images. Like I try and do that with a lot of the pieces that I do personally. I like top-down lighting because it does exactly that. It throws your eyes into shadow. Your brow casts a shadow over the eyeball, and then you don't get that really bright highlight. That's kind of what was going on with her. If you squint on her, her eyes. I mean, if you squint enough, her eyes are gone completely. It's just a dark shape. But you can see just a
yeah.
little. Actually, I'll show this on DeviantArt because it's bigger on there.
Little of a
Um,
hint.
just a hint of that white. Just a hint. There's really not much. There's really not much, and it's because I got her looking down. She's got a hood on. The brow is casting that shadow. It's a dark shape, man. It's a dark shape, and that makes you
Dude,
should
that leather
once you
is on
realize
point.
that. What's that?
I
Say
said
that
that
again?
leather is on point. Sorry.
A lot of this leather is photo. So
Oh.
it's of course it's definitely on point because it's photo. But I mean, you can see how the reason I did the photo here too is because if I had to sit there and scratch in all those details and shit, I'll fucking do it, man. I'll do it, but it's gonna take forever.
Yeah.
It's gonna take forever. And you saw how it worked on her, on her leather here. Like these are quick thumbnails, but it's pretty believable leather. If I sat here and did it for another 4 hours, like sure, we'll push it that much further, but a photo is going to give me the same effect.
hmm
And the reason I say the photo gives me the same effect, if I were to sit here and do it all by hand, the reason I like using the photo is because I'm trying to target this type of design, this type of character towards the film audience. And film, everything is live action. It's real shit. And so concept design for film, often that is their goal. Their goal is to make something look really, really photoreal, which means you're going to fucking use photos.
Yeah.
When you're doing something that's more painterly and less, I guess less refined, I suppose. Give me an example. Like, for instance, on these guys that I did with Zach, I used photo for texture on this metal to give me some scratches, but everything else was just painted
Yeah.
on the faces anyway. The background, we used a photo for the starry sky, and I think we used some photo on the planet here getting destroyed. I think there was some terrestrial continents and stuff that I went in and then broke up and painted on top of. But for the figure herself, there's no photo. There's nothing on there. It's just some texture in the middle, and I think some strips in her hair, right above her ear in the back here. Everything else is painted.
Yeah.
And it's knowing and understanding how those forms work that allows you to do that. Anyway, that's my comment on photo stuff.
Fuck yeah.
So cool. All right, man. We'll just keep cranking on this. Get the
Keep
figures.
cranking.
Keep the figure. Yeah,
The
keep the
rendering
figures
should be a lot
going.
easier.
Say that again.
The rendering should be a lot easier.
It should be easier. It shouldn't be something that you need to necessarily labor over. And I think the thing that affords you that ability is because you've knocked out so much of the design so far.
hmm
if you had to render along with doing the design and kill two birds with one stone at your current level of ability, that's really going to bog you down. And that's one of the reasons why I tried to tell you from the beginning, like, I want to get this design taken care of. We'll worry
Mhm.
about changing the values and the rendering and all that shit later because it's easy to do. It's really not that labor intensive to do. But let's get the design figured out first, and then we can go back through and start worrying about making it look pretty.
Yeah.
So yeah, there you go.
All right, man. Well, thank you.
Yeah.
Could you email that to me?
Sure. I'm going. Do you want the high res? Just as is.
Just
My only hesitation is I just don't want you to get in the habit of taking this layer and kind of throwing it on yours. If you want to use it
oh
as
no.
reference, great. Um,
No, I just wanted to be able to see it, like we were discussing the actual values
okay.
of
Yeah.
how the resolution. And like you can send me a low res, that's fine.
Okay. Yeah, it's just on its own layer right now, so you can flick this on and off and see what the changes were. But yeah, I'll send that over. When do you think? Because I know we're moving slower, and I'm like I said, I'm okay with that. I don't want you to feel like I'm disappointed and you let me down or anything like that. It's not that at all. We got to go slower. That's fine. Uh, do you want to do next Thursday? Actually, nope. Thursday won't work because I just set something up today. Um, do you want to do next Friday?
Yeah. If we can do it at 11, I might be a tad bit late. I get out of work at 10, so
Okay, I don't want to do that for you then because that's
no, that's
I don't
fine.
I don't want. Are you sure? I don't want you
Yeah.
like staying up super fucking late and like
Dude,
not
I'm
letting me
on.
think in.
I just pulled an all-nighter. I'm fine. I'm
That's
20. It's what
not
I do.
that's not good. It's
I haven't
bad.
slept since not yesterday, the day before. I slept
Yeah,
like 7 hours.
yeah. Don't be proud of that. It's not good. You gotta sleep, dude.
I know, man.
All right. Well, we'll go for Friday. Can you email me as you go?
Hmm.
If you don't feel like you're going to be able to get both of them kind of ready to present at her level, the way we've kind of done her tonight. If you don't think you can get both of them kind of ready to present by Friday, just let me know ahead of time. That's all.
Okay.
If you think you need the weekend to then work on it and we have to push it into Monday or something, just let me know.
Yes, sir.
It's not going to be the end of the world. Cool.
Okay.
All right, man. Well, good talking with you. Hope that
Good
helped.
talking. Thank you very much.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll talk soon.